There are three questions for me that are like troubling in this text, or at least have left me struggling. We actually as a community have already gone through the Gospel of Luke. That was the first book we ever studied together. And of course, this is maybe my favorite gospel because of its emphasis on equality and justice and so on. And so I'm familiar with this story, particularly even in the other gospel writers' accounts. So when I'm reading it now, and maybe this is true for you too, I'm sort of like trying to figure out what about it have I missed or misunderstood. There are plain truths here. You know, the miraculous power of Jesus, the love he has for the crowds, his ability to provide. We bring a little, he can do a lot. And yet there are some sort of underlying questions, at least for me. One of them is, why does this story, I'm just self-disclosing here, why does this story feel like it's about healing? I appreciate Julie bringing that up. I mean, if you read it actually before, if you read from the beginning of 9, even all the way into this, it feels like a healing narrative. In fact, if you took out the food part, it seems like a mass healing. And for some reason, healing is central to the way Luke wants to tell the story. And that's very confusing to me. I don't understand why. I don't fully see, at least not at my first reading, what this has to do with healing. And then I have this other question of like, when is it time to do a miracle? How do you know? Because every day these disciples are faced with ordinary problems, ordinary challenges, and they don't try to come up with supernatural solutions. Why is this day different from another day? Why do they have egg on their face? Because they say, how can we afford to buy lunch for everybody? Today was a day for a miracle, and yet the day before, they weren't trying to have a miraculous meal. The day after, they wouldn't. How do we know? How do we know? When faith properly applied is just go work and do what you got to do. And when faith properly applied is believe God for something which is impossible. How do we know? And the third question really for me is the most important question, which is really what is Jesus doing? What does he want here? Because you can read the story, you can read the history. This is what happened. But why? What does he want? What is in his heart when he's interacting with his disciples, with us this morning, with this crowd? What's in his heart? So let's start with this question about healing. Why the emphasis on healing? Why does he want to keep bringing us back to that singular note, somehow synchronizing or harmonizing all that he's saying with the idea of healing? Think of it this way. When you have a friend and that friend is very manic, they're just spaz, they're just going crazy, and they're super high. What do you feel almost intuitively that you need to do or be for that spastic manic friend? What do you have to do? Bring calm. You want to calm them down. When a person's active manic, what you intuitively feel you want to do is bring calm to that person. It's healing opposites with opposites. We feel like something is off when a person is acting manic, and we need to bring calm. And the reverse is true too. If you have a friend who is down or blue, what is it that you feel you want to bring to that person? It's like we sense something isn't quite right. Something is out of balance, and there needs to be, for lack of a better word, healing. Healing, of course, then is temporary, very temporary. Part of what I'm saying is it can be moment to moment. What if we're only applying the idea of healing that has something to do with like disease or something sort of catastrophic in our bodies? But the truth is we're constantly coming out of balance in our lives. And if you're blue or down or feeling depressed and your friend comes and tries to cheer you up, that's what we say. We want to cheer you up. What are we doing, really? If not the ministry of healing. I think life is full of these little temporary imbalances, these disorders when things get out of order. the way they're supposed to be, and then the way they are, or the way we feel. I think when Jesus sees people sick or in disorder, his intuitive response is to order them, to set it in balance, whatever is wrong with them. So physical disease, I understand that. At least I mentally understand that. But it seems like this predisposition towards healing from Jesus is actually more significant than that. Maybe it should be more significant for us. Maybe it should be more a part of what we do. I mean, if you were to describe, some of you would, if you were to describe your microchurch, your mission in life, or what it is you're trying to do, some of you would describe it actually by using the word healing. But my guess is most of us wouldn't. And yet I wonder if that's really what we're all trying to do. And then I start rereading the text, and I start thinking, okay, what is Jesus healing by sending the 12? What is he healing when he does that? What is he healing when he welcomes this crowd? Even though he's trying to have some time with just the disciples, the crowd shows up. By making that choice, what is he healing? What is he healing when he actually feeds the crowd rather than sending them away to find their own food? Maybe when he sends the disciples, what he's healing is this opposite belief that God doesn't use ordinary people to do his work, and he sees that as some kind of sickness in them. And so he sends them. Because he can't live with that unhealthiness. He can't live with that lack of clarity or balance or truth. Maybe when he welcomes this crowd, he's healing their alienation from God and from each other, the constant rejection that the poor feel. He wants to heal that. Maybe when he does this miracle to feed this crowd, he's healing their lack of provision. Like it isn't right. Something isn't quite right. They should have this. And so he sees that need and he provides for them. It is a kind of healing. If only for the moment, it is healing something that is out of order, broken, or malfunctioning. The problem is, if you want to take this view of it, the problem is, I'm not sure we can always tell what is order and what is chaos. I'm not so sure that our judgment is all that good in determining what is real sickness and what isn't real sickness. I think it was Jean Vanier, the founder of L'Arche Communities, who work with disabled people, create these extraordinarily beautiful communities all over the world. I think it's he who said, recently reading something from him, that said that in France, they are very close, they're in the precipice in France of not having any children born with Down syndrome. None. And the reason why is because they can get a test when you're pregnant, and they're all being terminated. All those pregnancies are being terminated. It's not that children are not being conceived with Down syndrome, it's that they're not being born with Down syndrome, because everybody in France has this idea that needs to be healed through abortion. And it raises the question, and maybe it's a hard question, maybe it's an uncomfortable question, maybe it's a question I'm not qualified to answer, but the question is Down syndrome something that needs to be healed? I mean, I don't know. I don't fully know how to answer the question, except to say people who are born, and I have a small sample, but all the Downs people I know, all the people with Downs that I know, seem to have a disposition or predisposition towards dependence, gentleness, social bonding, and joy. That's just my experience. So you tell me, do those people need to be healed from that? Man, these people they have a special ability to create bonds with other people. They bring a sense of dependence, joy, laughter, kindness and gentleness to the world around them, man, let's pray for their healing. Is it possible that we are so dysfunctional ourselves, we're so broken, that we have created a wrong sense of normalcy? And maybe we're not qualified to decide who needs healing and who doesn't. John Swinton tells a story. He was teaching a class, and he had a woman who was severely deaf who was in his class, and so she was communicating through an interpreter. And she shared with his class a dream that she had had of going to heaven, and being in heaven, she met Jesus. And there in heaven, she had a long conversation with Jesus. And she said she had never in her life experienced such peace or joy. She said, and the class asked, what was he like? How was he? And she said, it was extraordinary. He was everything I hoped he would be. This encounter, this dream encounter she had with Jesus. And the final thing she shared with the class was, and his signing was amazing. He was fluent in sign language. Now I want you to think about that story, because part of the question that the story begs is, when this woman sees herself in heaven fully restored and yet does not see her hearing restored, what does that mean? Except to her that she feels complete or whole without being able to hear. And this again, I feel like we're not always qualified to determine whether or not a person needs something. So we think, poor you, bless your heart, you can't hear. We need to pray so that you can hear. And yet, if you know deaf people, many deaf people don't agree with that at all. In fact, they would say, we're kind of good over here. I don't know, maybe we could pray for you. The hearing world, you have some issues. And even to see that, what does it look like for her in heaven? Is it that she will hear the way we hear? Or will Jesus just speak to her in her own language? Getting clear on what is broken has got to be critical for us as missionaries. How are we going to walk into a place? And this is true. I think this is true of the excesses of missionaries and the way that missionaries have hurt the world, not helped the world. We hurt the world because we walk in and we think, you need help, you're broken in this way. And the truth is, they're not. We are. And not being able to discern always between where there is real brokenness, irreconciliation between that person and God, or that person and the rest of us, and when there's actually just something broken in us which we are projecting onto them. So the other day I'm at Walmart and I'm checking out the self-checkout. Actually, before I'm checking out, I have to go to the self-checkout because I'm a self-independent guy. I like the self-checkout lane. And so right there in the Walmart, there's like I think it's like jewelry maybe, or watches and sunglasses and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of in that little area walking to the self-checkout, and I'm standing there looking at something, and this guy just comes over. He has a couple of Walmart bags, like plastic Walmart bags, and he just starts taking all the sunglasses and sticking them in there. He just goes, "Clunk," sticks them in there, and he goes over to the watch section, and he just goes, "Watches in my bag." I'm not kidding, watches in my bag. And I'm just watching him. He's chilling. And he looks a little bit rough, like maybe he's seen better days, this guy, and maybe like a little grizzled and a little sun beaten. And so I don't know. I'm sort of like, I just make an assumption that he's probably not going to buy all these watches and sunglasses. Like, he's not even really interested in picking the one he likes. He just takes them all. And I'm kind of like, okay, where's this going to go? So I go to the checkout, and I'm checking out, and sure enough, he just walks out. I don't know how he timed it, but like the greeter person wasn't there, and there was no light went off, and I'm standing there, and I'm totally frozen. I have no idea what to do. So I'm standing there going, well, okay, I'm a Christian. What does that mean right now? What? Where are we at here, Lord? Where are we at? Because there's a part of me that's kind of like, I'm for the poor. And I'm like, this guy probably doesn't have a lot. And this is like great, big, evil Walmart. I'm like, take it, man. Go, go, go. I got your back. And I'll like distract them so you can get out of here. And is that my position? Is that where I stand? I'm with that dude, you know. Good for you, man. Good for you. And then there's a part of me that's like, you know, stealing is one of the 10 commandments, I'm pretty sure. It's like top 10 things never to do. Sure, I think he's stealing. So I look over at the Walmart lady who's kind of doesn't care, you know, sitting there, and I'm like, whew, do I tell her? Then I'm like, okay, I feel like the right thing to do is go talk to him myself, like intervene somehow. And I'm like, what am I going to say? Hey, dude, don't steal. I understand, though, you know, sometimes we don't have enough. And so I just froze. I froze. It's one of those situations where I couldn't decide quick enough. And I still am not 100% sure what I'm supposed to do. I actually started feeling as time went on, and then I got in my car, and you know, you have that sort of retrospective thing, and I started feeling like, no, he shouldn't have stolen. That's not right. I should have said something. So that was my final answer. That was my final answer. I should have done something. I should have said something. But I was stuck. I mean, what good are we as missionaries if we can't discern what is real need? If we can't even know in one moment to the next what God's heart is, what the righteous response should be. I think about Mary, Jesus' mother, at the wedding of Cana. They have no wine, she said. And then she goes to the servants and she says these words, and this is it. Just do whatever he tells you. They have no wine. Do whatever he tells you. That's maybe our best answer to the question. If we discern a need, which we can, we should, there's all in our lives. There are these moments and these gaps in our neighborhoods, in our businesses, in our communities, in our schools, in our relationships. There are these gaps, these holes where we have no wine. And the best and wisest response is do whatever he tells you to do. I think Jesus is always trying to heal what is broken, always trying to supply what is lacking, always trying to fill what is empty. But we have to do what he tells us to do. A part of what is implicit in the story is that whatever doubts they have and whatever initial concerns that they voice to him, they still do what he tells them, don't they? They still take that blessed bread and that one basket and somehow go and get a bunch more baskets and somehow distribute. They put them in 50s and they do the miracle. They do just what he says. Doubts aside. I mean, how can I stress this to you this morning in the right way? The miracle hinges on the disciples' obedience. I'm going to ask you this question, it's rhetorical, but do you want to see more of the miraculous in your life, in your ministry, in your microchurch? Do you want to see more of the miraculous in your life? Then you have to be obedient. Do what he tells you. Step out and do something. Start with the belief that this is real. I mean, operate as if it's really going to happen. Who knows whether they believe that or not when they start distributing this food? Maybe they just think we're going to run out of food in like 3 people. We're going to be run out and we're just going to turn around and come back to Jesus. But we did it. We obeyed him. And it's in the obedience that the miracle comes. They could have said no. You know how I know that they could have said no? Because every day I say no. Because every day you say no. There's a premonition of a need, a sense that maybe God, but then we don't. We have our reasons, and we don't see it. But only first if we can identify that need. Step out, act as if. Our prayers often go unanswered, I think, because we're asking for Him to heal something that is actually healthy. Just think about that for a second. I mean, sometimes we think there's a need. Lord, please do something miraculous. And He's going, I like that. It's a virtuous cycle. Why would I change that? That's producing good fruit in that person and in the world. Why would I change it? We see brokenness when He sees wholeness. We see unhealthiness when He sees health. We see sickness and He sees something else. I think that happens. And then the converse is true too. Sometimes we ask God to bless something that is really killing us. We think, Lord, give us more of this because this is so good. Give us more of this because this is a sign of your blessing. Give us more of this because this is really what makes us whole or happy or healed. And He's going, what? That's killing you. That's sucking the life out of you. That's distancing you from me and from your brothers and sisters. Why would I do that? I wonder if half of our prayers don't get answered just because of those two reasons. Just because of discernment. We have to learn to clarify, to clearly see the need, the real need, and then do whatever Jesus says. And to the disciples' credit, they do. That's my first question, has to do with healing. The second is about when is it time for a miracle and when isn't it? I mean, I'm just sympathetic because I think, I don't know, the day before yesterday, they're like, oh, let's all go to Canaan for a wedding. And Jesus is like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go to Canaan for a wedding. And then they're like, okay, should we get up early and start walking? And Jesus is like, oh, you have little faith. Why didn't you ask me to fly there? Or why? I mean, when are they supposed to have a supernatural response? And when are they supposed to have a natural response? Because every day they're faced with little problems. Every day. Every day you're faced with little problems. And when are you supposed to be like, I believe in a miracle working God, you know? Today I'm not going to take my car to work. I'm going to just transport myself to work because I believe in miracles and I want to have a supernatural view. I mean, maybe it is the day that you're supposed to transport, not just to work. And maybe as the faith people would tell us, it's just we don't believe enough, or we don't have enough faith, or we're not looking at it as supernaturally enough. And the truth is, I just don't see that in Jesus. In fact, I don't even think He's on some miracle crusade. I don't think He woke up that morning going, today's the day, I'm going to do a big one. I'm going to do a big one. In fact, let me think about it. You know, He's just sort of like, let's be creative today. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, let's see, it's going to be a big crowd. I know. We're gonna feed them all. We're gonna feed them all, but there's only gonna be 5 loaves of bread. That's what I'm gonna do. High fives the Father, and they go out like, this is gonna be awesome today. This is gonna be awesome. I don't think so. Maybe he has some foreknowledge of what He will do, maybe He doesn't, but I don't think He's setting out on a miracle crusade. In fact, there's nothing in the Gospels that makes it clear to us that His purpose is to do miracles at all, actually. Nor is it in the book of Acts the purpose of the church to do signs and wonders. Instead, the purpose is to bear witness to the kingdom being birthed into the world. Now, how do we do that? Well, sometimes when faced with an impossible problem, something supernatural has to happen so that everyone around can go, wait a minute, is this the kingdom breaking into the world? Has something fundamentally changed about the world that we're in? Is God interacting with us in a different way? You better believe it. So how do we know? I mean, when is it time for a miracle? And when isn't it? When is it time for us to have that kind of faith, to apply a supernatural solution to a natural problem? And when is it time to just apply a natural solution? And so there's this little exchange. You give them, he says, you give them something to eat. And they say, their response, which I suppose at one level is a lack of faith, it's to say, but we only have this. You do it, but we only have this. I mean, at one level, it's just prudence. It's just, oh, you want us to feed everybody? We don't have the food. We don't have the food. Do you want us to buy it? How about we just send people and they can go get their own lunches? These are very acceptable solutions. And Jesus doesn't seem to be mad at that response. But there does, maybe Jessica said this, there does seem to be some sort of misunderstanding, some forgetting of what they just came from and where they just were and what they were just capable of, because there's some sort of strange flow of belief. What is Jesus doing when he looks at them and says, you do it? Like he's saying, he's empowering them, like he's saying, you can do it. You could feed them. And they're going, what? Don't you remember what you were just able to do in my name without me present? Remember that. You can do it. Part of the problem is not that sometimes there's a natural solution and sometimes there's a supernatural solution. It's that they forget that there's ever a supernatural solution. Even a day after we've seen the supernatural, we suddenly go back and revert to this belief that the supernatural isn't real. We're practically atheists. I mean, it's possible because they've seen that it's possible. By the way, I'm pretty familiar with this logic of sort of like, well, this is what we have. What can I do with that? And not necessarily immediately kicking over to, but Jesus has more. We could do more with that. It's like Jesus wants them to know, I think maybe even wants us to know this morning, you may have very little. You may say to him, this is all that I have. And that is true, practically true. This is all that you have. You might say, my life is insignificant. You might say, my gifts are very small. You might say, my sphere of influence is very small. And you might believe that that's the end of the argument. You might actually think that you have said something to God which matters. And it doesn't, because he understands that whatever you have, whatever little thing that you bring to the conversation, whatever little supply that you bring, he brings himself. And that little bit plus Jesus equals anything. Your little bit plus Jesus, the presence, the power, the authority, the name of Jesus, means anything is possible. Anything. And maybe that's part of what they're forgetting. Just what their little bit, their lack, can do with the sufficiency of Jesus. I don't think Jesus sets out to do a miracle this day, but he looks at the ordinary need of this gathering. And they're saying, disperse them, and they'll be able to go get their own food. And Jesus is saying, I don't want to disperse them. I want them with me. I want them to stay. And so what do you have? You feed them. Bring me what you have. And I'm going to turn that somehow. I am capable of turning that into enough for everyone. Sometimes a miracle is necessary because there is no other natural way, because the impossible is called for. I'll tell you this week, last week I shared that we're losing this building. And I made the argument that that's a good thing, that that's a virtuous cycle. Of course, it's not a good thing to lose our building. I'm not delusional. Yay. But it's a good thing in the sense that I know what it will produce in us, and I know what it drives us back to. I know what it reminds us. By the way, there's like a hole in the roof over there, and water's just pouring down, it rains, and I'm like, that's not my problem anymore. So that was nice. That's a nice feeling. But I'm pretty sure that's not the whole point of Jesus taking away the building, so I didn't have to worry about that hole in the roof. But, we need we don't have much. So now I have the problem, because we don't have the building. I know after August 1st we won't be in this building. So because that's true and real and happening, I can say, okay, God, I know you're going to provide. I know you love us. I know you're going to work with us through this, but I still have to go and see what he can do. And cards on the table, we have about $7,500 a month that we can put towards a facility. The problem is that facility has to serve 175 different ministries. It has to be big enough and have enough going on that it can meet the needs of all of our microchurches, all of our constituent ministries. So I know most of you don't do this for a living, so you won't understand that $7,500 is not enough. That's not a lot of money. In fact, if you say, I don't know, let's just say, if you really want to get nice prime kind of office space or that kind of thing, you're going to pay $15, $20, $18, $20 a square foot. If you pay, just for simple math, I'll break it down for you. If you pay $12 a square foot, then whatever the square footage is of that space, that's your monthly cost. So we need about 40,000 square feet. 40,000 square feet would be at $12 a square foot, which is kind of, I don't know, maybe like a mid-level thing. $12 a square foot would be $40,000 a month. Okay, so here's the thing. We need a $40,000 a month space. We have $7,000 a month. Do you see the problem? Anybody? You don't have to be good at math to see this problem. Okay? So I get the privilege, the joy, the virtuous cycle of going into negotiations for 40,000 square feet situations with $7,000. I get to say, I tell you what, guys, I tell you what I'm going to do. Here's what I can do. Because I like you. Tell you what I can do. I think I could go as high as 7,500. Think about it, talk about it. So what do we really need? I mean, what we really need is something miraculous to happen, because nobody in their right mind rents us that space. At least not that space that isn't like a cow pasture or 50 miles out of town or doesn't have air conditioning or something like that. Because part of what we're looking for is something with air conditioning, something with fire suppression system. This is all stuff that if we have to put in, it's too cost prohibitive. There's no way we could put into a rental space stuff that on its own face is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to put in. So we need something that's pretty much ready to go. We need it in a populated area. Yeah, nobody wants to go to, I don't know. Nobody wants to go to like that way out into the woods. I was going to say a name, but somebody's going to be from there and they're going to be hurt. So I'm not going to say anything, or really any direction where there isn't people. The whole experiment breaks apart if nobody wants to drive there. Do you understand the problem? So we need a place that's like populated, which means you're going to have to pay more for that kind of space. That's near where people can get to and so on. So this is the problem. The problem is what we really need. And what I've been praying for months as I've been trying and looking and exploring all of our options, what I've been praying for is I'm like, Lord, you have to give us, there has to be some sort of breakthrough donor. This is how I'm thinking about it in my mind. Like, I need that first initial, or I need $1 million. I need someone to just come up to me and be like, Brian, this is how I see it. But this is how it all plays out in my mind, by the way. So I'll just let you into my fantasy world. Someone comes to me, Brian, I tell you what you do is so amazing. Your people are so inspiring. I just don't know of a better use of money that I've ever seen. Tell you what I'm going to do. Here's $1 million. Just do whatever you need to do it. That's how it goes in my mind. So I'm waiting, and that's not really happening. We're trying to figure out. But I'm still operating off this idea that I've got to pay for it. It's exactly what the disciples say. How are we going to feed these 5,000 people? That would cost us so much money. Where are we going to get the money? So immediately what they do, problem, cost. It's a financial solution. They think problem, cost. And then they start calculating the cost, say, we don't have that much money, that's too much money, how can we possibly pay that much money? And when you enter into this kind of thing where you're looking for something, it's almost impossible not to see it through that lens. But there is one other possibility. And the possibility is that we meet somebody who, for whatever reason, because God's working in their heart, that they have the space. We say we have $7,500, and they say we'll cover the difference. In other words, that person becomes that donor. Now, I have to tell you, this is not a done deal or signed or anything like that, and I'm not going to tell you more about it, but I will tell you that this in my hand is a contract that I have for a 40,000 square foot space in a populated area in the city of Tampa, which many of you will like, actually, the area, and it's for $7,500 a month. So, lower your expectations. Okay, so celebrate God, lower your expectations of me. As long as we are doing that, we're good. I'm happy. Okay. I haven't even read it. I just got it. It exists though, and that's already a big thing. We have an agreement in principle. We have to read it. Lawyers have to be involved. Signatures have to be applied. But guys, this is already extraordinary. And the reason why it's extraordinary is because these people in particular, this space, were just pretty much, it's out of the question. The price is out of the question. We are weird. We're a weird thing. So who are you? What do you do? What? What are you? So I don't think you're weird. I think you're beautiful. But people might think you're weird. I understand. And me, too, as well. It takes a minute to get there mentally. So I was able to convince these owners, who aren't even from the city, flew in. I was able to convince them to spend a little time with me, to come here, and just give us a chance to explain what we do and who we are. And they were very moved. They were very moved. And in that conversation, one of the things I said was, guys, listen, because his exact words were, the money you're offering is not exactly blowing our hair back. That is a direct quote. And I was not shocked, I was like, well, it's a lot of money for us. And no. I understood. And actually what I said is, guys, listen, if you do this, you're basically becoming a major donor for us. And you know what they said to me? They said, we know. We know. So we're all clear here on what's happening. So just to put this in perspective, if this were to happen, if this goes through, if we're able to sign this, we're talking about a 3-year deal where we will pay over the course of 3 years about $300,000 for this space. What is it worth? So again, let's be conservative. Let's say it's worth $12 a square foot. And maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's more, depending on who you ask. Let's say it's worth $12 a square foot. So put that in perspective. That's $40,000 a month of what it's worth. That's $1.4 million over 3 years. We're going to pay $300,000. That's $1 million gift. That's a 3-year gift from these people who don't even know us. But we're somehow moved enough to say, okay, maybe. I come to this problem and I say, Lord, all I have is this. All we have is $7,500 and a story to tell. All we have is $7,500 in our hearts. And it's enough. It's enough. Because Jesus is for us. I feel like, especially if this is just an example, it's not the whole point. But if this were to materialize, if this becomes something that I can tell you, maybe next week or the week after, where we're going, if it does materialize, won't we have to say that this is just like this feeding of 5,000? Isn't it exactly the same? And isn't this maybe, at least if you just take 2 examples, isn't this maybe what God wants to do in our lives? Not every day. He doesn't want to fly you to work or transport you to work. I don't think so. Maybe. Probably not. But when are these moments where it's just impossible without Him? I think he loves to come crashing into those moments. And anybody who's engaging the world and the mission of God, I think you know what I'm talking about. I think you know what it's like to face an impossible problem, to feel inadequate to handle that problem, and to be able to say with total honesty, this is all we have, this is all we bring. And it's at that moment where you see the real need and you know you don't have enough. It's at that moment that this is possible. He'd already sent them, and he still sends us without things so that we will be in need of him, so that we'll find that supernatural supply, so that we will understand that there is a provision that we construct, and then there's a provision that only God can give. And guys, if I had my way, if I could just have all the money that I need and go out and shop for whatever, it wouldn't be better than this. Do you understand that? It wouldn't be better than going into these negotiations with nothing to offer. It's better this way. This leads me to my last question. What does Jesus really want here? What is the point? What's in his heart? What's his deepest desire for us? Why feed these people? Why teach? Why send? Why create this mission? What is he doing? And even in that line, you give them. There's something happening, some sort of transferring going on from Jesus and his authority and his name and his quality and his ability to change the natural world. He's giving it to them. And I do think it's a reminder of what they just did, where they just came from. But it's also a beautiful picture of the relationship he's creating between himself and them. He's saying effectively, and listen to this, because this is it, man. This is the secret of what we do. He's saying, guess what? I'm the one, I'm the origin of all this power, but I'm going to let you be the one to deliver it. I'm going to let you be the one that feels what it feels like with your hands to be the one feeding, providing. You can be the ones who deliver the grace that you know my name brings, that you know that only I can give. I want you to think about that this morning. Who did the miracle? Who does the miracle? I mean, at one level, Jesus does the miracle. We understand that. Jesus is the one who blesses the bread. He's the one who calls, if you will, on heaven to intersect earth in this one time and space. But who really does the miracle? With their hands. They do. They do. Those broken, ignorant, confused hands, faithless hands, they're the ones that get to deliver the grace. Jesus is always the origin of every miracle. He's ultimately the one who's responsible. But guys, what must it have felt like to be them? They were the closest to it. They were touching it. They must have felt special in some way, and that's it. Honored by the grace of God passing through us. Blessed, somehow changed by the grace of God passing through us, from Jesus to this person in need. That's the secret. That's the secret to the missionary life. That's the secret to this life. That's why people think we make sacrifices. People say, oh, it's hard. It's hard to be a missionary. It's hard to care for difficult communities. It's hard. And it is hard. I'm not discounting the pain or the scars or the bludgeoning that we get in those circles. But listen, the secret that we know, that other people just watching from the outside don't seem to understand, the secret is that it's worth it. That what it really feels like to have the grace of God pass through you to another person, there's nothing like it in this world or the next world, and that is ultimately why we do it. Sacrifices that we make, they don't even amount to anything on the scales of that. They're not even worth. The way Paul put it is, when I consider my present sufferings, I just think that's not even worth comparing I mean, it's a bargain in the end. This must be what Jesus meant when he said the kingdom of God is like this pearl, that once you see it, you sell everything you have to get it. It's that good. You give everything you can. You sacrifice whatever you need to sacrifice in order to get it. And I see sort of in closing, I see this foreshadowing of communion. I'm going to invite up the worship team. What really is his ultimate point? Why feed them? Why gather the disciples? Why send them at all, if not for communion? There is this result, this outcome of mission, and it is communion. This feels almost exactly like the Last Supper. The wording is the same for Luke. The gestures are the same. The theater of it is the same. It's Jesus sort of saying, I think this is the first communion. I think this is him preparing them for all that communion means, all that final supper means. It is ultimate communion with him. It is a seat at his table. It is redemption through his cross. All there on this day, in this crowd, in the heat of that sun, in the question of that need, in the supply of the supernatural provision of God. It's all just to make us friends with God. It's all so that we can commune. That thing which is broken between human beings and the God who made them, who loves them, who knows them, who has a destiny for them. All that is broken there. He just wants to see them come home. And all of it, all the trouble that he goes to, is just about that. It's about friendship with God. This is communion in the place of mission. This is a story ultimately about the cross, about the canceling of debt, the debt of sin, and reconciling us to God and to each other. His body blessed and broken for us. It's a story about the table, inviting us, welcoming us into the fellowship of the table of the triune God. His body blessed and broken for us. This is a story about healing, about restoring us, about bringing back what is lost, ordering what is in disorder. His body blessed and broken for us. It's a story about supernatural provision, isn't it? When you need something that seems impossible, He's there. He's able. His body blessed and broken for us. This is a story about mission. Or a seat at the table. Or our windfall of love from Him means that we go to the very ends of the earth so that others can have a seat at that table too. Listen, Jesus Encounter participants, if you have come, if you have encountered the very specific love of God for you this weekend, and those that participated in serving, loving, and praying, if you have been reminded of the very specific love that God has for every human being, it is not simply to sit there in the revelation of that truth, but it propels you, it moves you, because you begin the second revelation you have after you realize He loves me, He knows me, I matter to Him. Can you believe that that's true? And once the wonder of that begins to settle upon you, the very next thing that happens is I must pass that on to other people. Everyone has to know this. Why are there more volunteers at Jesus Encounter than there are participants? Because there are more of us who already know. And you who have been a part of it this weekend, you're the next round of volunteers. To remember, they are loved too. His body blessed and broken for all of us. This is the first communion. The table is big enough for all people. Mission then is an invitation into the communion of Jesus. It is friendship with God. I think Jesus doesn't want them to go because He wants them there. It's about friendship. I think He wants them to eat because He just loves them, because it's a problem that is there and He wants to solve the problem. I don't think in the grand scheme of eternity, God cares all that much about our building or where we meet. But He cares about us. He cares about me. He cares about you. And he's always at work in us somehow. And he will always provide what we need. I started thinking what it means to be a friend. And part of what it means to be a friend, I think you'll agree, is to hear each other's stories and to bear each other's burdens. Think about that. That what it really means for us to be friends, for you to be my friend, for me to be yours, is that I hear your story and I bear your burden. What then could it mean? Wrap your mind around what it means to be a friend of God. To hear his story and to bear his burdens. For him to hear your story, you understand. For him to bear your burdens, you understand. But what is mission if not accepting upon our shoulders some of the burden of the heart of God for the world? It's to say, God, what upsets you? What grieves you? What matters to you? I want that to matter to me. You see, just being saved by God, just being loved by God, like some fireman that saves you from a burning building and you forever owe him some sort of debt because he saved you. That's one thing. But I'm talking about friendship. I'm talking about communion. I'm talking about relationship. That person becomes your very best friend. Yes, he saved you. But more than that, you begin to bear each other's burdens. This is the communion of mission. This is what this table is about. That's why Paul says, when he talks about communion, he says that whenever you eat this bread, whenever you drink this cup, you supernaturally proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. In the taking of the bread, in the coming to the table, in the accepting of the fellowship, you also propel the mission of God into the world. You proclaim to all who will hear. My youngest, I'll close with this. My youngest child, his name is Skylar. You probably have heard me talk about him. Maybe you've seen him, maybe you know him. The problem with having 6 kids, one of the problems with having 6 kids, particularly when you have older kids who take up a lot of your time because they're screwed up. All people are screwed up, but the older we get, the more good we get at being screwed up, or the more complicated our... So look, my oldest daughter is about to get married. That's taken a lot of time. She's marrying an amazing guy named Johnny, so he's new, kind of a new part of the inner circle of our family. He needs time. Noah is pretty good. He does his own thing, but I love him. He still needs some time. Eve occasionally takes up some of my time. Luke is a teenage boy. He's needing more time. And I just looked down at Skylar, the last one, and I just realized I don't know this kid. I don't really know him. And it dawned on me the other day, or something happened the other day, where he always goes to Monica. He doesn't go to me. He always looks to Monica. In fact, he'll avoid me to go to Monica. And I was sort of troubled by it the other day. I'm just like, what? Do I not have a close enough relationship? And by the way, there's no perfect parents here, and I'm not a perfect parent, so I have no problem being vulnerable with you and saying my shortcomings as a parent. I'm going to tell you, I don't think I've cared for him the way I should, because he's no trouble. And Monica said this to me, and it's very difficult for me to hear, but she said, Brian, he's scared of you. He's scared of you. So I think, okay, yeah, he's not sneaking out at night. He's not getting in any trouble. Does that mean I don't give him any of my time? So I just know that's wrong. So I think, okay, I'm gonna focus on him. I'm gonna give him some time. So one of the things we did recently is I took him to a baseball game. And we just had this, I don't know when the last time, just he and I had some extended one-on-one time, just the two of us, where I just lavished him on a whole afternoon, a whole evening, just with me. And I'm going to tell you guys, something happened. Something changed in him. Like, we bonded. We had some jokes. I think he's 8. Is he 8? I think he's 8. We had some jokes, some 8-year-old jokes. He learned the game of baseball. Just intentional love time. And then I've started to collect him in my arms every day, not let a day go by. In fact, as often as I can, I collect him in my arms, and I take his little face in my hands, and I look him right in the eyes, and I tell him, Skylar, I love you so much. You're my son. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. I just want to hold his little face in my hands. And you know what started to happen? Something really extraordinary has happened in his heart. I mean, the result really is nothing short of a transformation. He used to avoid me. Monica says he used to be scared of me. And now I come home. He's the only one that gets up from whatever he's doing. He gets up and he comes over to me, hugs me. Hey, Dad. Dad. Everyone else doesn't care anymore. They all used to do that. Nobody does that anymore. He always wants to find me when it's bedtime, no matter where we are. He comes and he finds me now. He never did this before. He comes, finds me. Dad, good night. I love you. I just want to say I love you. Good night. He started doing this. He started finding me in the middle of the day. He'll just come into my room or wherever I'm working, and he'll come in and he'll say, Dad, do you need anything? Do you need anything? And I always think, something's broken inside me, and I always think, what's this kid after? What's his agenda? What does he want? I just think the next thing he's going to ask me for something, but he doesn't. He's literally showing up just to say, Dad, I love you. I'm thinking about you. Do you need something? Guys, if this is not a picture of what it means to be in relationship with God, friendship with God, I don't know what it is. What does it mean for us to come face to face with the love of God in something like Jesus Encounter, for God to put our face between His hands and to look us in the eye and say, this one, I love you. I know you. And maybe we used to be scared of Him. Maybe we used to be mad at Him. But whatever it was, there was a distance between us and God, and somehow He has crossed that distance. Somehow He has demolished that wall that stood between us. And now what? Now what happens is we want to be with Him. We want that intimacy. We want that communion. More than that, we want to do what He wants us to do in the world. This is right. Normal. I'll never be able to reconcile for you or anyone else what it means to enter into that kind of intimate relationship with the transcendent God. God who created the world. It is epic to be in a relationship with the judge of all things. And I cannot really actually reconcile what it means to be in that kind of intimate relationship with such a powerful and transcendent God. But there it is. And just like that day on that countryside, Jesus took bread on the night He was betrayed. He broke it and He gave thanks for it. He said, this is my body given for you. Eat it to remember me. And in the same way, after supper, He took the cup and He said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, a promise which I shed for the forgiveness of your sin. Drink it to remember me. This morning I ask you to come and recommit as you come to this table to communion with God, which means in large part an agreement again to be a part of His mission. But it is equally as important that you know His love for you. That you do not go in need or starving to feed the world, but you go with the abundance that comes from eating at His table. And so this morning, this little bit of bread, I want you to understand that it is life itself. This little bit of juice, when put together, those two things represent provision in everything in your life. I don't care what you need right now. If it's something that God really wants to see happen in the world, He will provide. This little bit of bread represents the fullness of the kingdom, the abundance of the kingdom of God. Bow your heads with me for a moment. Lord, we come again to this table in humility and excitement. We say yes again to your love for us, but we also say yes again to your mission upon us. To be a part of feeding the world with very little that you have given us, but to see you added to that small supply to be enough for everyone around us. Lord, use us We come again to your table wanting communion with you and with each other in Jesus' name. Guys, when you're ready, the body and blood of Jesus given for you.